Hi, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unveiling the Shroud. And today we have a special guest who will be joining us probably for the next 3 or 4 segments. And so Cassandra is a good friend of Liz and I, and we'll be talking a little bit about her experience with death and dying and how she came to be doing what she does now.
We're very excited to have Casandra join us.
Oh, look how cute you are. All right, let me come around and put this on.
You could take mine, actually, because I may not be talking as much as you. Whatever.
Okay. So Cassandra, you want to introduce yourself?
My name's Cassandra. I am an oncology nurse. And the whole reason I became a nurse, later in life, I'm a second career nurse, was because I went through the process of helping my mother when she was dying. And it was such a powerful experience that it made me want to. Initially, I thought I was going to be a hospice nurse. The hospice nurse that worked with us while my mom was dying was really amazing. And so maybe, yeah.
Is there a reason you chose not to be a hospice nurse and go a different route?
Yeah, it's kind of a longer story.
Okay.
But one of the main things I learned when I was taking care of my mom is that hospice nurses come and they sort of, when a patient is transitioned to hospice, they come and get you set up. And they're sort of your contact for if the patient needs, if your loved one needs more pain medicine or things like that, but they aren't there 24/7.
Right.
So they really teach you how to take care of the patient, how to do a bed bath, how to know when the patient needs more pain medicine. And when we first set up hospice, my mom was still alert and oriented and talking. But that was a real shock to me and my family that we were sort of the caregivers, you know, and because,
So did the nurse not stay there for the entire day?
oh no, they really didn't even come every day.
Okay.
And as I become a nurse and now learned this, that's not really the role of a hospice nurse. A hospice nurse is there to teach the family how to care for the patient, for their loved one, and they take a back seat if and what they sort of are there for is if something changes. So she would say, this is what we're going to do, you know, how you're going to take care of your mom. And if your mom gets worse or if she stops communicating, let me know. So every time my mom would have some kind of a transition, we would call her. And we would call her kind of when we were panicking,
Yeah,
you know?
that's my experience with my mother. They were always available on phone.
Yes.
But
yeah.
you were the people who were there. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really interesting to note.
Yeah, and I think it's a real shock to patients. So now that I'm a nurse, or when I became a nurse, I would try to let my patients know that and their family know that when patients were getting worse. So when I went to nursing school, I was very interested in hospice nursing, but then I also, my mother died of a gynecological cancer. And I thought, you know, oncology is very interesting. You can give her to me if you want. That's my dog.
We have another special guest today, Willa.
This is my dog, Willa. She barks if we don't pay attention to her, so she wants to be part of the video. So I got really interested in oncology nursing because in oncology you develop long-term relationships with patients. You know them sometimes from their first diagnosis until their end-of-life care.
Wow.
And I really liked that you got to develop that long-term relationship. And I knew that to be a good nurse, they usually encourage you to start out inpatient, working in a hospital. And so I did that, and then I fell in love with that. So that's why I didn't become a hospice nurse. I still think about it from time to time. Maybe at some point I'll become a hospice nurse.
So I have a question. You talked about The only time you called the hospice nurse was when something different happened. Can you talk a little bit about perhaps what some of those things were?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think families often get upset about is when their loved one stops eating and drinking. And that was like, we were concerned. We were like, she's not eating anymore, or she's really even stopped drinking. And we would try to encourage my mom, like, Mom, you got to eat something, and aren't you thirsty? And she would just say, no, I'm not hungry, I don't want to eat anything. And it was upsetting to us, because I think you sort of think of life as being sustained by food. And
Exactly.
and so when family members watch their loved one stop eating and stop drinking, it's almost alarming to them. But what the hospice nurse explained to us is, as her body shuts down, she's not going to want to eat or drink, and that doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to die in 12 hours. The body can live for a long time without food and water. So that kind of put my mind at ease. But as a nurse, an oncology nurse, I have to remind patients very frequently of that. It's okay if they don't want to eat. But that, I think, sometimes is the family's first sign that the end could be near. And so it's alarming.
And it's also, it can be dangerous to eat if your body is shutting down because you can't digest things.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, my mother became extremely constipated at the end of life. And so I thought, I'll give her some milk of magnesia. And that ended up being not such a good thing, so it caused her more distress long term.
So I hear you saying something that I think is really interesting. I just spontaneously here. Trust the body as it goes through this process. The body knows what the body needs to do. And we need to somehow figure out how to support that in a person who's dying.
And I think trust what the patient wants.
Exactly.
So it's hard to put your trust in that.
And as a family member, something similar happened with my mother, and it was the hospice nurses who let me know. It was her caregivers who thought I was starving her. With their own fears about maybe their own family members being in the same situation. But they're not eating, you're starving them, and that isn't, it's not what it's about. They just...
Well, and culturally, some cultures, food is so important. Like I took care of a woman from a big Italian family, and the kids just kept saying, "Ma, you gotta eat, and I was like, she really doesn't have to eat.
That's such a great example.
So I mean, I don't mean to imitate anybody, but it was, I think culturally we gather around meals, and when patients can no longer, even months before they die, they might be nauseous, and it's hard for them to participate in meals when they're not feeling well, and so figure out a different way to spend time with.
Celebrate. So it's not the Last Supper. It's something else that we want to celebrate.
Exactly.
Music
that's not
something
focused on food.
Well, isn't it also true that as the body shuts down, it means the organs are shutting down, and so the work of digestion is no longer a priority.
I mean, when you're sleeping, usually your digestion slows down, and it's kind of like that. They're in a bed, the body is telling them that things are, by not moving, So that was a big surprise. I think I was also the one that was kind of there when my mom was transitioned to hospice. I have many siblings, and all of us came home. None of us lived in the state where my mom was, and we all came home at different times, but because I was there when she transitioned to hospice, I was in charge of the medicine. And so I was giving her these doses of morphine, and that was a really big responsibility for me. And at one point, she just started to kind of fall asleep and stay asleep, and I was like, what have I done? Have I given her too much? And that put a lot of stress on me, but I think in retrospect, at a certain point, the patient does start to sleep a lot, and morphine really helps with air hunger. Like if patients are slowing down, if their heart rate is slowing down, their lungs are, they'll start to fall asleep and they won't be breathing as frequently. And then sometimes they'll wake up very anxiously, like gasping for air. And so if you can give them a little bit of morphine, it just lets them relax and they don't have that anxiety anymore. And that's a really helpful thing.
So your term air hunger is the relaxing of the breathing process?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Well, they slow down and then it's almost like their mind kicks in and they're like, she's so bad.
She's so adorable.
Well, adorably bad. You're adorably bad, you bad girl.
All right. So
Yeah.
This is so helpful.
Yeah,
Casandra.
air hunger is I think, a hard thing for families to witness.
So they relax and then they wake up wanting to breathe.
What it reminds me of is sometimes when you fall asleep and you're sleeping on your back and you suddenly wake up because
Yes.
you're snoring or
Yes,
something.
yes.
Those are pauses in your breath when you're
Yep,
asleep.
yep.
People who have sleep apnea, they get that a lot,
Exactly.
So, but it causes sort of an anxious response. And a little bit of morphine. You don't want to give patients too much,
Right.
but it helps them relax because the air hunger can be anxiety provoking.
And it's also for pain as well, isn't it?
Yes, morphine definitely helps with
Okay.
pain. That's its primary reason.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
awesome. So I hope everybody has enjoyed listening to this segment of Unveiling the Shroud. And as we usually say, here's to living life more fully as we embrace conversations about its end. See you next time.